Hello, my name is Bones, and welcome to the second game devlog video. And it took so long to make this one because I was sick for about a week. So this should have been the third video in 3 weeks, but it's the second video in 3 weeks. So um, let's get right into it. Let's not waste any more time. I've made up for the lost progress in the past few days after I got better. So firstly, this right here, this is not the player you're seeing, this small ball here. It looks like our player, but it's not. It's an enemy I'm testing. So you can see the enemy has a circle collider set to east trigger. What this does basically, and I'm going to open up the script to show you. What this does is, um, first of all, this just means that it's going to ignore the enemy itself when shooting array, and you have on trigger stay 2D, so while something is inside the collider a certain function will be executed, like let's say this if statement here. So if other dot compare tag means it's gonna compare the tag to whatever enters the circle, and if it's a player it's going to create a vector2 direction to the player's position, and this raycast hit 2D is going to launch a ray from the enemy's origin to the player, and if it hits a player, an object with a player, basically if it has an actual visual of the player and the player is not just behind a block but still inside the on trigger or behind the collider, it's going to draw a green line if it hits the player. If not, it's just going to draw a red line. So let me show you that. Also, another thing before we before I show you how it works. Right here's a prefab stone tile. It's basically all the blocks that have been that instantiate when the game starts. So you see all of these rays here. A lot of them are not populated, but if you open up the script, these are just a bunch of rays with all of the types of blocks. So blocks with top, bottom, and left borders, or just left borders, or single blocks, whatever. So what this script does is ignore this part. This is just so it no longer has a parent. What this does is it's going to create some these are just positions vectors for these are going to be overlap circles, the left, right, top, and bottom, which are going to check whether something is there on other block, and depending on that it's going to check all of these statements, if statements. So if we're going to start with all of the conditions with the most amount of conditions, and it goes all the way down to the least where it's just checking if something is to the left or to the right. So if nothing is to the left, to the right, top, and bottom, then it's going to instantiate a single block. Well, let me rephrase that. It's not going to instantiate anything. It's going to change the sprite to a single block with a random number from the single blocks array. So you can have single blocks, multiple of them, but they're not all going to look the same. They're going to look different. The reason why we're doing this from top like this with all of the conditions at the top and the least amount of conditions at the bottom is because if we're gonna have a single block um, with nothing around it, and we're going to check if there are something right of it, it's going to just instantiate a block with a right border. but that's not what we need. We need to do it in this order, otherwise stuff is going to instantiate wrong. So that's about it. I'm gonna now run the game and show you. You can see it has all these sprites, but it's going to change them. So these are the middle block sprites. You can see this one is of one type. Let's go to the, which one is this? Middle blocks. It has two elements, middle block variant 1 and variant 2. This is variant 1 and this is variant 2, and the script is going to randomly pick one of them to change the sprite into, so we can have more variation. The other ones, they're not done yet, so don't worry about those. I'm gonna do them for the future episodes. Now I'm going to move the player. I'm gonna make the game view a bit larger. I'm gonna select the enemy so you can see the circle. I'm gonna show you what's up with that bar in a bit. Now the console, these are just reference exceptions for the camera, because the camera is already in the scene when the player is not. So it's throwing null reference exceptions about trying to find the player which is not there. And as soon as the player enters the scene, these errors stop. So they're not a problem. Watch. So it's going to enter, it's going to shoot a ray which is going to follow the player, and you see it's saying stone tile here because that's what it's hitting. It's going to print out the name of whatever it's hitting, and it's hitting a stone tile. Now if you move up here, the ray changed to green color and it's saying player. So this is basically ensuring that the enemy has a line of sight of the player, and it's not just going to be able to see the player through walls. Because if we just used a collider set to is trigger and we enter the collider, the enemy would have been able to see us even though they don't have a visual of us. They can't actually see us. So that just makes sure the enemy can see the player before doing anything. And now we can't see the player when it's above because it's hitting this right here, this empty game object. I'm gonna have to change that so it no longer hits the player, the empty game object I meant. So that is that about the enemy. Now for the bar right here, if we zoom out all the way, you can see there's a canvas here with a health bar. So this is a health bar that I made this. It's a fill amount type of image which has another image behind it. Let me move this one so you can see that's the background right there. So what this does, it has a script onto it. Let me show you the script. Come on, unable to open. What? I'm not able to open the script. That's interesting. Player health. There we go. So all these variables right here which make the script work. So what happens here is a health bar which finds a game object in the scene with a tag HP bar, which we can see the health bar has this tag, and then assigns it the component image of that object to this health bar image type variable. Then we just set these variables about target health, health bar dot fill amounts, and health to 1. Now in the update function, we equal health bar dot fill amount. So basically the fill amount of this image, we equal it to the health. This just means here, this if statement means that the health can never be above the target health. So if the target health, let's say, is 100 and the player somehow heals up to 115, it's going to be 115 minus 100. So the result of the equation is 115 minus 15, so that's 100. So the player can never go above the target health. Now I just made this for um, to show how the script works. I initially used space, even though it's the jump key, doesn't matter. So the player is going to take a random amount of damage every time between 0.05 and 0.07 every time we press space. And we can just do something like if health is less than or equal to 0, then player died. Something like that. It doesn't actually matter.